You may call it protecting your peace, but sometimes isolation is just a dysfunctional adult doing everything possible to avoid feeling exposed, hiding in a private life that feels comfortable, controlled, and quietly empty. And I already know what you're thinking. I'm just independent. People be so draining. I do better by myself. But if alone is the only place you feel safe, that may not be independence. That may be a way of protecting unresolved childhood wounds. In this video, I'm going to show you why isolation can feel like peace when you grew up in chaos. Why being around people can sometimes feel exhausting. Why some of us don't really date. We hunt for people blinded enough to miss our red flags and damaged enough to let us control how they see us. And I'm going to explain why the same emotional avoidance that makes you disappear from people can eventually make you disappear from your own life. Because alone may feel safer, but safe and fulfilled ain't the same thing. If you spent years believing that the reason that you don't finish what you start is due to a lack of discipline or laziness, I'm gonna need you to stop doing that. Research has repeatedly linked procrastination to emotional regulation and short-term mood repair. So that means that you're not necessarily avoiding the work. What you're avoiding is the emotional part of your creative process. Hence, your routines and resolutions fall apart, nothing ever getting finished. Me and Romani Malco will be hosting a live 90-minute workshop breaking down the emotional blind spots that's crippling your follow-through and a blueprint for what to do about them. And yes, it's a live 90-minute workshop. If you ain't a millennial or Gen Xer, this probably ain't for you. I don't need these youngsters trying to check me on my pronouns in the middle of my workshop. But if you are a millennial or Gen Xer who is ready to confront your emotional blocks and activate the go-getter in you, the link is in the description. Let's get back to the program. I used to think I was just good by myself. It sounded mature. It sounded masculine. Sounded like something a man says when he got his own place, his own bills, and his own little emotional bunker with Wi-Fi. But the truth is, I wasn't just independent. It was deeper than that. I knew how to sound self-contained. I knew how to say, I'm focused. I'm protecting my peace. I don't do drama. But sometimes what I really meant was, I don't want nobody close enough to see how anxious, defensive, insecure, and emotionally underdeveloped I still am. And this is where most men click out because real men don't do emotions. That's the lie. It's a hard thing to admit because isolation can make you feel powerful. You ain't explaining yourself. You ain't negotiating. You ain't compromising. You just sitting there by yourself, feeling spiritually superior with a phone full of unread messages, and not to mention dreaming in a bubble. All my ideas sound amazing in isolation. Dog, if ideas paid bills, I'd be on Elon's ass right now. Y'all not gonna like this, but the difference between peace and protection ain't what you think. See, peace restores you. Protection hides you. Solitude gives you yourself back. Isolation keeps everybody away so nobody can ask what's really going on with you. That's why alone time can feel good when you grew up in chaos. Because for some of us, being alone was the only time nobody was yelling, criticizing, berating, lying, drinking, fighting, cheating, threatening, shaming, beating, or using you as an emotional dump site. You might not remember it that way, but as a child, you were wide open, highly impressionable. Everything you witnessed left an imprint. So after witnessing all that dysfunction, alone time became your safe place. Quiet became safe. Invisible became safe. And once your body learns that invisible means safety, adulthood gets tricky. Because now somebody can love you or just give you attention and it still feel like pressure. That is why being around people can feel draining and physically exhausting. Not because you always doing something wrong. Sometimes it's because deep down you feel so inadequate that the only way to be worthy of people's company is to perform, to be useful, be extra cool, be an extra fool, be subservient, be anything but your damn self. But at some point, every clown has to wash off that makeup and take them bozo shoes off. You might call it independence, but in reality, it's just intermission for a performer who never felt accepted for being himself. Did I lie or is you typing bars in the comments right now? Bars? Here's how isolation robs you without looking like robbery, kind of like on some poo shiesty shit. Isolation does not just keep people away. It keeps feedback away, correction away, opportunity away, accountability away, mentorship away, reflection away. And maybe worst of all, it inhibits your ability to define and refine your social presence. You ain't using your gifts. You're using a bunch of cooking oil and nothing on your knuckles. Talking about you about to blow. Okay, Ron Jeremy. Now let me tell you why people feel unsafe. When you grow up in dysfunction, your alarm system gets trained early. Researchers studying childhood adversity and stress response have talked about how early trauma can affect the body's stress system, including the HPA axis. Now, I know HPA axis sound like a broke R&B group from 1997, but it's basically a part of the body's alarm system. And if your alarm system grew up in a house where love came with yelling, affection came with manipulation, and attention came with criticism, then closeness can start feeling like danger. That means connection may not feel like support. It may feel like surveillance. It may feel like somebody walking through your house with muddy shoes on, touching stuff, asking questions, opening drawers, and calling it intimacy. That's why some of us can be funny in public, but unreachable in private. Charming in a courtroom, but unavailable in a relationship. Helpful to everybody, but emotionally bankrupt when somebody asks us to be honest, because public performance is different from private exposure. Public performance lets you control the image. Private exposure asks you to surrender the mask. And some of us would rather arm wrestle a parking meter than let somebody see the part of us that still feels inadequate. This is where childhood logic becomes behavior. If expressing feelings got punished, silence becomes intelligence. If needing people led to disappointment, not needing people becomes pride. If family felt unpredictable, emotional distance becomes home security. If being noticed led to criticism, invisibility starts feeling like strategy. Now you grown. Got facial hair, credit score, a favorite chair, maybe even joint pain that predicts rain better than the weather app. But emotionally, part of you is still using childhood rules. Don't need too much. Don't say too much. Don't trust too fast. Don't let them see where it hurt. And that is not always wisdom. Sometimes that is fear with good posture. Dr. Joy DeGraa's written a gang of shit on this, right? How survival adaptations can keep moving through families and communities when pain is not addressed. Dr. Naeem Akbar challenged us to think about how social conditions identify the historical injury that shapes our minds. Dr. Thema Bryant talks about healing in a way that includes truth, culture, body, spirit, and the self you had to abandon in order to survive. So no, this ain't about calling you broken. This is about asking you whether the thing you call your personality is really an old protection plan. Because I know what it is to choose people who let me hide. I wasn't always dating for love. Sometimes I was hunting for someone wounded enough to miss my red flags. Somebody distracted enough to overlook my poor emotional regulation. Somebody impressed enough to not challenge my insecurity. Somebody damaged enough to let me control how they saw me. And that is a dangerous kind of comfort, because when two wounded people meet, sometimes they don't build intimacy, they build a hiding place with matching keys. That ain't chemistry, family. That's two damaged childhoods signing a lease. And if you're not careful, they'll call that love because it feels familiar. But familiar don't mean healthy. A trap can feel familiar too, especially if your family helped decorate it. Type bars in the comments if you get that. Now would be a good time to hit the like button if you like something, and if you motivated as hell, hit that notification bell. But if you invested in seeing this channel grow, I'm gonna need you to hype this video and share it with your folks. Raise your hand if you make your big plans alone, meticulously mapping out your vision, but avoid the rooms where that same vision would actually get tested. Raise your hand if you creating a bubble. Business plans, graphic novels, screenplays, show ideas, books, courses, nonprofit ideas. You got it all laid out, but somehow them plans, them ideas, them visions never see the light of day. I could map out the whole vision for the Tijuana Jackson Empire in my head, put that shit on paper, but I wouldn't let nobody see the blueprint because I was too emotionally fragile to have my vision, my ideas, my dreams challenged. So instead, I justified keeping it to myself, doing it by myself, perfecting it by myself, protecting it by myself. And after years went by with not a lick of real progress to show for all the work I had done in my bubble, I realized something painful. I had confused effort with achievement. The only thing I really built up was my fear of rejection. Type bars in the comments if you get that. Bars! Have you ever heard of the fantasy of private greatness? Because it's deeper than just doing it alone. Part of me had felt so rejected throughout my life that I was living to prove myself. I wanted to show up and blow up out of nowhere. I wanted the story to be, y'all doubted me, y'all overlooked me, y'all didn't see me, but look at me now. So in this weird way, working in the lab like a mad genius was appealing. But the truth is, it was self-serving. What was it serving, TJ? Oh, it was serving the coward in me. It was serving the ego in me. It was serving the part of me that did not want to live in reality. And what is reality, TJ? Oh, reality is go-getters is outside. The people who follow through, they outside. The people who make things happen, they outside. They are not just in a room imagining how powerful they could be if everybody finally understood they genius. They testing, they failing, they adjusting, being corrected, being misunderstood, being challenged, learning in public, crying in private, then coming back with a better version. Because when you become invested in anything meaningful, there is an emotional part to that creative process. And that emotional discomfort is usually directly related to all the things you spend your whole life avoiding. The unfair treatment, the neglect, the berating, the beatings, the abandonment, the rejection, the shame, all the ways life made you feel small before you even had language for what small really meant. That stuff don't just disappear because you got somebody pregnant. It becomes internal dialogue, self-doubt, self-limiting beliefs, a voice in your head. It sounds like wisdom, but it's really fear pretending to be your advisor. And the minute you try to build something meaningful, the minute you say, I want to create something that matters, feedback starts feeling dangerous. Because now, the possibility of rejection can reaffirm everything you spent your whole life trying not to feel. That is why some of y'all stay in a bubble. Because in the bubble, nobody can reject you. Nobody can tell you it needs work. Nobody can tell you the market don't want it. Nobody can tell you your audience needs something different. Nobody can tell you the math don't math. And nobody can look you dead in your face and say, that sounds good, but what you doing with it on Friday? The bigger lesson is don't live to prove yourself, live to improve yourself. Pause. Now, this gonna rack me up some haters, but y'all need to learn the difference between hours and iteration. One of the things I remember reading in 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and OG business coach Dan Sullivan was a point they credited to Naval Ravikant. It ain't really about the commonly known 10,000 hours theory. It's more about 10,000 iterations. Meaning, it's not just time spent. It's learning loops. You try something, maybe 2 people respond. You adjust, you try again. Maybe 5 people respond. You adjust, you try again. And this time, maybe 9 people respond. Over time, you are not just creating. You are building a clientele and learning how to serve. You are learning how to reach people. You are learning how to create for the needs of the people you claim you want to help. That cannot be done alone in the closet next to your shake weight. You can spend 10,000 hours in a bubble perfecting something nobody asked for. Nobody tested. Nobody challenged. Nobody needed. That ain't mastery. That's emotional arts and crafts. Type bars in the comments if you get that. Pause. I'm not a business coach, but I do help creatives, business owners, and visionaries confront the emotional discomfort that keeps sabotaging their growth. Because this does apply to business. It applies to art, marriage, parenting, community, purpose, everything meaningful. I've seen the most out-of-shape ninjas outrun emotional discomfort on a Guinness World Record level. Never once was out of breath either. I coach folks who went from isolating for most of their lives, and the moment somebody let them crack, they in love. They getting married. They talking about they gonna be the best husband in the world, the best wife in the world, but they come into the relationship with a preconceived notion of what the best husband or best wife means. And their interpretation has nothing to do with the actual needs of the union. Nothing to do with the dynamics of their union. Nothing to do with the emotional wounds in their union. Nothing to do with the nurture required inside of their specific relationship. So they ain't even loving the person in front of them. They performing their private idea of love, and they're projecting their privately curated expectations of what marriage is supposed to be onto their partners as well. And that is exactly what a lot of us do with our goals, our dreams, and our ideas. We sit in a bubble with preconceived notions of how the world, the market, the audience, the community, or the people we want to serve are supposed to react after we finally reveal what we've been doing in the dark. Ninja, you ain't Bruce Wayne. Come outside, get that exposure. Confront the emotional discomfort, day in and day out. Take those moments where you have to go home feeling like a failure. Hang your head down when you thought you had it locked. Maybe even cry like I have with this Tijuana Jackson stuff. That is the passage of rights that unlocks new levels in you that you didn't even know you was capable of. Because the people willing to experience that type of discomfort become the game changers. Not the people with the biggest private fantasy. The people with the courage to iterate in public. That is why isolation is so dangerous. It does not just make you lonely, it makes you unavailable to the mirrors, corrections, relationships, opportunities, and repetitions that would have helped you flourish. Type bars in the comments if it's hitting different. Hey family, if you ain't figured it out by now, the real reason you keep stalling on your goals has nothing to do with how disciplined, motivated, or focused you is. Men hate it when I say this, but your failure to follow through on the things you know would improve your life is not a discipline issue, it's an emotional issue. Don't take my word for it. Research has been confirming this for over 2 decades. Look up the Tyson Bratzovsky study, the Sorois and Pico study. You are not avoiding work. What you're avoiding is the emotional part of your creative process. Oh, by the way, women do this too. That's the real reason your follow-through is garbage. You don't need another planner. What you need is emotional awareness. Romani Malco and I are hosting a live 90-minute workshop where we expose the 5 emotional blind spots sabotaging most people's progress, and we hand you the exact playbook to get you active on your shit. Short, ready to take notes. This is for millennials and Gen Xers. I know what your upbringing was like, and I know the emotional toll it took on you. The workshop is live. If you are a millennial or a Gen Xer who is tired of sleeping on your own ambition and needs some real ones to wake your ass up, the link is in the description. Let's get back to the program. So let's stop talking about isolation like it's just, I don't feel like going out. Research separates social isolation from loneliness. Social isolation is the objective condition. Fewer relationships, fewer contacts, less participation, less support. Loneliness is a subjective experience. You can have people around you and still feel unseen, unknown, unsupported, or emotionally homeless. That distinction matters because some of y'all are not physically alone. You are emotionally unavailable in a crowded room. You got contacts, followers, family, a woman, a man, a group chat. People know your jokes, your work ethic, your favorite team, your child's name, your food order, and you still don't know where it hurt. That is not just introversion. That is a survival structure. And for black folks, we have to be even more honest because isolation does not always come from one bad childhood story. Sometimes it comes from learning to survive in families, schools, jobs, neighborhoods, and systems where being too honest, too soft, too emotional, too needy, too visible, or too trusting came with consequences. Dr. Robert T. Carter's work on race-based traumatic stress gives language to how repeated racial hostility, discrimination, and humiliation can create real psychological injury. And this is important here because some distrust is not paranoia. Some distrust is pattern recognition from surviving rooms where exposure had a cost. Some people don't isolate by leaving a room. They isolate by becoming so useful, strong, funny, and dependable that nobody ever asks if they okay. Some of us don't disappear by doing nothing. We disappear inside productivity. We work so hard nobody notices we stop being reachable. So no, I'm not telling you just open up. That is lazy advice. Some of y'all had very intelligent reasons for closing in the first place. You closed because people were unsafe. You closed because your needs got ignored. You closed because your feelings got mocked. You closed because every time you was vulnerable, somebody mishandled the evidence. Type bars in the comments if you get that. But here's the problem. A survival strategy can be intelligent and still be outdated. A locked door can protect you during a robbery. But if you keep it locked forever, eventually nobody can bring in groceries, medicine, money, correction, or opportunity. That is what isolation does. It starts as protection. Then it becomes deprivation. It keeps out criticism, but it also keeps out mentorship. It keeps out rejection, but it also keeps out intimacy. It keeps out disappointment, but it also keeps out development. So the question is not, do I need people? The question is, has my isolation stopped protecting my peace and started protecting my fear? Bars! Because alone may feel safe, but safe is not always healed, and private is not always peace. Sometimes private is where your potential goes to avoid being challenged. Type bars in the comments if you get that. Now look, some people gonna suffer their whole lives because they wasn't willing to suffer through a few uncomfortable moments. Bars. And that's the part that'll sneak up on you. You keep avoiding one awkward conversation, one honest confession, one hard room, one real piece of feedback. Next thing you know, you paying bills for, supporting, and married to everything you didn't want. If you fail to accept the challenges, you fail to accept the journey. Yo, come outside arc starts now, and this video is a step in the right direction.